Well, good morning and a warm welcome to everybody joining us today on this first city webinar in our 2022 series. My name is Patrick Pavlacic and I am Head of Research at BONARD. Today we are going to lock in our focus on the city of Milan. We will start with a market briefing that will feature key data and trends in the market. We will cover supply and demand dynamics. We will look at the pipeline. We will also elaborate on the monthly rent levels, and we will discuss the future outlook for the next 6 to 12 months. The presentation will be followed by a panel discussion, and we are so grateful that we will be joined by a panel of 4 distinct market leaders. Now, before we start the presentation itself, for those of you who are not familiar with BONARD, we are a market intelligence and a strategic development company, and we specialize in rented residential asset classes. We're based in Austria, in Vienna. We have 2 other offices in Europe and 1 office in China, in Tianjin. We're now 56 people, and today we have delivered over 520 research projects, feasibility studies, site location assessments, in-field student surveys, as well as consultancy projects. We regularly monitor over 200 geographies, as being cities, regions, as well as countries, and our total inventory spans over 12,000 PBSA assets with an overall bed capacity of just below 2 million beds. Now, looking at this webinar series, 2022 will feature 6 more sought-after markets as per the numerous conversations we have with industry professionals, but also the market activity that we see, as well as our own market potential assessment. The data and insight that you're going to see in a moment basically combines our in-house data on the market and field research findings, which are coupled with interviews with local stakeholders that we conduct prior to each of these sessions. We hope that you will find this overview enriching, as we will also talking about the drivers that shape future outlook. As you can see on the screen, we've selected 6 markets in continental Europe, and we'll be starting with Milan today, a session which will be followed by an in-depth dive into Warsaw, and then we will continue with the rest of the markets, such as Berlin, Paris, Lisbon, and Madrid. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite my colleague, Andrew Sameno, who is a senior research manager at BONARD. And Andrew is going to guide us through the latest statistics, as well as key findings from our in-field research and industry conversations. Andrew, please take it away.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you. Good morning to everyone. Let's start with the quick market snapshot, starting from the demand part. So Milan is the biggest student destination in Italy. Students are not only coming to study, but willing to stay after graduation and to boost their career in the city of Milano. The city has 29 universities and colleges, out of which 7 are globally ranked. 34% of all the students are coming outside of Milano, still being local, but coming from other parts of Italy. 11% of all the students are international. Compared to other matured markets like Germany, France, and UK, this number is significantly lower. At the same time, all the student groups are growing by adding on average between 3 to 5% annually. Let me quickly, before jumping to the supply section, show you how we can easily put the data in a more visualized way of presenting. So now you see the map where we are putting all the campuses, learning campuses with universities and colleges. If, for example, we have an area of interest that is located not in the central area, we're also using the different, we're putting the different campuses if this area is interest to us and probably to our clients to evaluate the location assessment as well. Let's, for example, have a quick look at the Milano Polytechnic University that has several campuses located in Bovisa area. It's here. Why this area might be interesting for us? Because if we look at the current pipeline, we see that we have two big developments in this area with approximately 2,200 beds in total. Basically, using this map, we can navigate throughout the city, looking at all the pipeline residences that will hopefully be delivered in the next few years, as long as adding and looking at the current private rental market situation, as well as non-private. So navigating into this map, you can eventually see the city in the full details. Let's talk about supply. The city has around 85 student residences. Private student residences are responsible for nearly 1/3 of all the city stock. Among them, Camplus and Indomus are holding approximately 60%. In January 2022, another big operator, Heinz, opened the first residence with 600 beds. All three operators are now accountable for 76% of all the private beds in Milano. As one of the Italian PBSA peculiarities, we can highlight inclusion of different meal options into the room price. Around 30% of all the private residences offer this to the students. Also, we are able to do a different kind of analytics. On this example, we are showcasing all the city residences, public and non-private, private and non-private, where you can see the capacity versus number of facilities. For example, only 12% of all the private assets are big residences with capacity of more than 300 beds. However, the situation is changing and the share of big developments will be essentially growing. We see a minimum of around 6,300 new beds that are expected to be delivered by the end of 2025. Considering BONARD's student demand forecast, the provision rate is estimated to reach a little bit below 8% by the end of 2025. In this scenario, by the end of this year, meaning 2025, Heinz will have the largest stock with nearly 3,100 beds, followed by Campus X, delivering around 1,700 beds in total. Milan is offering a various number of room types to the students. We've picked up the most widespread, while single room as the most represented. As you can see, the price range is huge and students are eventually able to find the offer they like. Quite interesting was to see that private providers are able to charge higher versus non-private providers on 59% and 55% for single room and single ensuite room, respectively. With sufficient number of facilities, assets are able to maintain high prices. What we also know from the research, that students are incredibly important to have a wide range of quality facilities. As a good example, we can take, for instance, gym that is available in around 42% of all private PBSAs. However, it is already a must-have feature for all the recent openings across the biggest Milan private operators. What is also interesting about Milano is that even small assets can offer almost similar number of facilities to the tenants. To provide an international perspective, we are benchmarking Milan against some selected cities in Europe, which are also a part of the webinar series, as Patrick mentioned in the beginning. As you can see, the current provision rate in Milan is currently stated at 5.3%, which might be probably compared only to Madrid, while the cities as Paris and Berlin are more saturated, but still behind the expectations. This was very quick, but this is the last slide, I wanted to represent you. You're more than welcome to come, to call us, to contact us, and we are happy to have you among our clients. And now I'm back to Patrick.
Thank you, Andrew, for this briefing. I do acknowledge that this was a relatively fast snapshot of the market situation, but obviously we will be sharing the presentation with the attendees right after the session, which will hopefully give you an opportunity to dive deep into the data and benchmark your understanding of the market with the BONARD in-house statistics. Now, it is our distinct pleasure to be introducing our panel for today. I'm really thrilled to be inviting Pier Enrico Maringoni on the stage, who is the CEO of Indomus. Pier Enrico, good morning. It is great to have you with us today. And if you can briefly introduce yourself, we'd be very grateful.
Thank you. Good morning to you. Good morning to all. And thank you for the kind invitation to this webinar. I know that Andrew was talking from Kiev, so I want to express him my solidarity. And taking inspiration from JFK, I think that today we are all Ukrainian. Coming back to Indomus, we are a private operator with 3 hall of residences in Milan, one recently opened, and we offer about 1,100 bed places. Our solutions cover basically all the spectrum of the offer, starting from affordable to high end of the market, but we certainly focus on affordable solutions. Our format can be summarized in a high level of socializations, also thanks to the large communal areas that are in our hall of residences, safety, security, and privacy.
Thank you, Pier, also for the kind words. We truly appreciate. Next, it is my great pleasure to be inviting Stefano Pagliani, who is the director with Hines Italy. Welcome, Stefano. Thank you for joining us today.
Patrick, thank you for inviting us. It's a pleasure for us to join this important panel. I'm with Hines. I've been with Hines for the past 5 years. As you know, we as Hines have our own, we are born as a developer, but we have our own in-house student housing operator, Aparto. Aparto is active in the UK and Ireland with roughly 5,000 beds. And since January, it's our pleasure to be able to say that we're open also in Italy, where we open Aparto Milan Giovanale. And by the end of the year, we'll be opening a second building. We're also planning on getting to Spain later this year. It's a pleasure for us to be here today and hope to have an interesting discussion.
Thank you, Stefano, and we're certainly looking forward to your inputs. Next, please join me in welcoming Susanna Graziano, who is the expansion project manager at Campus. Good morning, Susanna.
Good morning. I would like to thank BONARD for inviting us. It is a great pleasure for Campus to support you in offering an overview of the Italian student housing scenario, and in this case in particular in Milan. For the participants who do not know us yet, Campus is Italy's most established provider of purpose-built student accommodation and mixed-use housing. We manage over 9,000 beds across the country and in Spain. We started over 30 years ago, and currently we have 200 staff members working with us, and we manage 520 million euro real estate portfolio, owning 41% of it. We have a varied housing offer ranging from student residences, living learning residences accredited by the Ministry of Education and Research. These are called Collegi di Merito, and it's a peculiarity of the Italian student housing scenario. We also have apartments and short stay solutions. We support students in the academic career, as well as young professionals and those needing flexible housing solutions, ranging from 1 day to several months. We operate in 13 Italian cities, 2 Spanish cities. In Milan, we're present with 900 beds, 3 Collegi di Merito, 2 residences and 60 apartments, as well as rooms for short stays. We have 1,500 beds in the pipeline, both in Italy and in Spain, and we look forward very much to this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. We appreciate you taking the time, and we also look forward maybe to some correlations or comparisons that you can provide when it comes to Milan within the greater Italian context. And last but not least, it's my great pleasure to introduce Elisabeth Taliente, who is the Development and Asset Manager at Campus X. Good morning to you as well.
Good morning, Patrick. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for inviting us to this webinar. We are very pleased to be here because we are student housing company, private, but we are trying to developing lots of beds for students in Italy. Right now we have just 6 student housing all around Italy, and the last 2 opened last September in Turin. And we will be in Milan soon, starting from September 2022 until September 2024. And as you said before, and we are working on 1,600 beds and trying to introduce in this city a new concept of student housing focus on fun and cool staying in our housing, because we, from psychological survey on our student, we developed that they are, most of them are foreigners or people far from his family or friends, so they need to socialize. So that's the most important point for our business. And we are trying also to make an hybridization of the models, introducing the Explorer in our student housing. So we are planning to have hotel rooms and co-working space also in partnership with very important co-working operator, Italian operator.
Sure. Thank you for the introduction, Elisabeth. I'm really pleased with the diversity that is represented on this panel. Before we dive deep into the questions that we would like to discuss during today's session, we would like to do a quick poll so that also the audience knows a little bit more about itself. I'd like to invite my colleagues to start the poll. And if you could very briefly identify yourself with any of these categories so that we also know how we can type your next answers according to the group that you represent. Gonna keep it open for some additional 20 seconds so that everyone can provide their answer. I'm still gonna keep waiting a little bit longer. We still see responses coming in, but for the time being, I can share that we have more than 180 delegates on today's webinar. So thanks very much, everybody, for taking the time. And now I believe we have the results in. So the biggest, the most represented group today are investment and asset managers at 31%. The second largest group are developers. We have 19% of those. And the third biggest are advisors. We have 17% of our audience. Well, notably, we have 14% of investors, and we have 11% operators. So quite a diverse group today, and I'm really looking forward to some of the other questions that we will be posing in a moment. Now I'd like to go to the first question, and I'm going to start with Pier Enrico here. Obviously, One of the key performance indicators we didn't touch upon in the presentation are occupancy rates. We know that the COVID-19 pandemic has had a profound impact on, especially the first wave, on student and enrollment and delivery modes, and colleges and universities switched to online education. Nevertheless, what we've noted was that the occupancy rates at private PBSA remained high as providers were really quick to respond to the health and safety measures and the associated challenges, and continuously prefer to stay in their destination and continue to study. In your experience, what occupancy levels did you observe for the 2021-2022 academic year in Milan?
Thank you, Patrick, for the easy question. I will be short. For this academic year, in our 3 hall of residences, we have basically 100% occupancy. And that was the result of a very successful booking. We finished the booking very early last year. And so there was a long line of people that were not able to enter our premises, our hall of residences. For the next year, we don't see any indications that the market is turning down. So we are certainly optimistic for the next year.
Thank you. I think it also correlates with the demand-supply gap that we've seen before. The same question for you, Stefano. How did the occupancy levels perform for you, or your observation in general for the market in Milan?
Well, for us in Milan, obviously having open in January, this is a sort of soft opening that we've had. So we're currently at 60% occupancy, which is still a very impressive result, and we're extremely happy with the levels that we're seeing, because that means that we have roughly 350 students and a 600-bed facility that opened a month ago during this obviously this crisis. Internationally, i.e. in the UK and Ireland, we're seeing similar levels to what Enrico said, so full occupancy. Our view for the next years is a sustained demand, also helped by the return to classroom that most universities are already implementing. So we see the market is very hot, and we don't see any reasons why it shouldn't keep this way.
Yeah, I think quite a testament of the resilience in the market. Susanna, if you can share your experience, perhaps.
Sure, absolutely. Well, occupancy levels were always high, even during the pandemic. And the key aspect here is to be pandemic ready and to respond really quickly to the crisis. So we implemented protocols to make sure students and staff were safe, they were properly taken care of, and the direct contact, the constant contact with the parents was also super important. In fact, after the first lockdown, most of the students decided to stay, and we supported them and their families also in our Collegio di Merito with a very varied and diversified digital offering, which really helped them throughout the pandemic. And the staff really went above and beyond to make sure that they had everything they needed during the lockdowns. Another key aspect that we should consider when looking at our products in particular is a very, very high return rate. So if you do not consider the students that finish their academic career or move abroad, we are over 70% of a return rate, confirming the bed for the next year. So we are optimistic. We see additional growth and strong interest also in our new residences. So but the being pandemic ready aspect is really, really important.
Sure. Just a quick follow-up question to that. Did you see any variations in a kind of nationwide context, being present in multiple cities in Italy?
No, because we always work. We always work as a network. So all the activities that we implemented and the protocols that we implemented were carried out straight on from the very beginning. And there was a huge discussion with students on what the benefits of going home would be versus reducing risks for themselves and others. So most of them actually, preferred to stay. They focused on their studies, and we provided them with the tool that they needed, including additional tutoring and support activities.
Sure, I see. And the same question for you, Elisabetta. What is your take on the current occupancy rates in Milan and your forecast for the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, we are still not open in Milan. We will open in September 2022. But in general, I can see that, as my colleague said, the occupancy was very good, especially after pandemic. So we saw an increased level of occupancy during this year, and we are very optimistic in the future and forecast always around 100% with a long list of waiting to attend at our campuses. And we can see that during the lockdown, the guys the first reaction was to go back home. But then after 2 weeks, people call us, parents or guys, to come back to the campus because the original houses are not enough big to stay all together. Because they feel safe in our campus. We, as Susanna said, we also introduced different protocols to feel safe and be safe in the campus, and we didn't have a big problems with COVID, with infected people. And surely I can see that the culture of the guys is changing in Italy. I mean, until 5 years ago, for the normal things was to rent a private apartment, but now the culture is changing. People is traveling a lot. The internationalization is growing up, so people want to go abroad. So people come to Italy to visit. In Turin, half of our students are foreigners. So both this. For sure, the pandemic, but also the people want to stay abroad, want to be international, and also the culture and the good level of our campus is increasing the opportunity and the needs of the student to come and stay with us.
Thank you. I think you had a really great point about the potential for further internationalization of the market, as we've depicted. The share of students still at 11%, which is relatively low compared to other leading cities in Europe. And obviously, with the value proposition that the city provides, the future forecast is relatively positive for the city. But to wrap up, you all are seeing really, really high occupancy rates with a positive outlook going into the next 12 months. Now, I'd like to take this to the audience again for a quick survey. How obviously those who are active in Milan are seeing the occupancy rates evolving, what they've registered in the recent months. It'd be, I think, great to just compare your own very individual, of course, experience with a broader market experience. And as we are waiting for the answers, I also would like to encourage our audience today that you can post questions through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If there is still time at the end of our session, I will be asking our dear panelists questions you're interested in, and if not, we will take it to them after the session so that you make sure that your questions are answered. We're going to wait probably a few more seconds, getting hints from our marketing colleagues that there are answers coming in. Good, and the results are now in. So there is a really strong sentiment about the occupancy rates. 37% of all attendees registered anywhere between 95 to 100 occupancy rate in Milan, and the same percentage, so 37%, experience between 90 to 95%. There's a huge part of the market, and actually the rest of the responses are quite equally distributed between 85 to 90 and 80 to 85%. So that is quite a strong outlook for the market. Thanks very much, everybody, for participating. You've also, Elizabeth, touched base on maybe the product and the evolution of the product, and looking at things from a broader perspective, not only the obvious impact of COVID and the adjustments that providers have had to make, but do you see any developments in terms of product adjustments? What is currently trending among students, or how you simply how this simply influenced your design of the building and facilities?
Sure, we are getting as I told you, the culture of the student is changed, and they are much more technology. They use the technology very fast, so we had to change our business model, introducing an app to reservation, to ask for facilities, to book new product, our community opportunity and parties and events. They are the students are very interested in green aspect, sustainability, so they really take care of it, and they ask it, and they ask us to be really focused and respectful of this point of view. For this reason, for example, we are trying to developing a building with LEED certification, gold, hopefully gold certification, because this is one of the new driver. As you know, the SG product and the SG philosophy is like entering very strongly in the product, and also in our, and we have like as I say, it's like it's a focus for us to respect, to go to these new needs of the young, also as example. I mean, we have to be an example for them, because we are growing a new generation in our campus.
Fair enough. And let me go to Stefano, because you also just delivered a fresh product to the market. How are you driving the entire process of designing the building and perhaps meeting student preferences?
Well, to be quite honest, we did not change our design due to the crisis, or we did not change anything following the COVID pandemic. So in our building, we have a mix of rooms that range from a twin, which is your typical twin room, so you have 2 beds sharing a bathroom. We have en-suites, which is your typical private room, so a single en-suite room. These 2 typologies, they're organized in clusters, so you have 6 to 12 students sharing a common space. And then we have studios and studios extra large, which is the typical studio, so it's a fully independent room. Our clusters are designed in a way that we allocate roughly 5 square meters per student. And obviously we have all the kitchen and cooking space enough for this number of students. Every cluster has a loggia. So this is a small covered balcony, which is obviously very, very helpful for students, especially during the spring and the months with better weather, which we have a lot in Milan. So obviously that helps. We also have a very large and generous internal courtyard, which is open to all the students. It's very green. There's outdoor sports equipment. There's games such as ping pong, football, and everything is accessible, and it's outside and it's green. So we see a lot of demand for green spaces, like Elizabeth was saying. We don't have that many concerns from students regarding the twin rooms, even in a post-pandemic ward. So they're still willing and open to sharing spaces. Obviously, what you need to adapt is managing any restrictions or quarantines. So whenever you have a twin room, obviously you need to be able to, if the student, falls positive, then you need to be able to allocate them somewhere else, because in a suite or in an independent room, it's easy enough. With a twin, it's a bit more complicated. In terms of sustainability, all of our buildings are LEED Gold certified. And so we as Heinz, we put a very strong emphasis and attention on all sustainability aspects. So ESG is a strong focus for us.
Right, and you actually answered partially one of the questions that we received in the Q&A section. But there's also a follow-up question to that. And I think you're going to be pretty brief to answer this one. What is the ideal size of your PBSA project, and in terms of beds and rooms?
For us, we need a lot of economies of scale because we have a strong provision of common space. So the gym is quite large, the courtyard is quite large. We have a lot of study spaces, cinema rooms, chilling areas. So for us, below 400 beds is a bit tough. So we're 400 plus.
Sure, thank you. The same question for you, Susanna. If you can talk briefly about product development and maybe your ideal size of the PBSA.
Absolutely. So starting with the the new needs and the preferences, I would say first of all that students were and are still looking for a sense of home away from home, and this is precisely what we're trying to do. The room types. Well, our experience in this regard clearly identifies the single room as the preferred room type. Yet, also in our case, if location is great, students are more than willing to share a twin room. This is the case, for example, at our campus study, and also because it is also more affordable for families. There's an important consideration to be made, especially considering the new developments and how the city will be transformed. This is something we'll be discussing. Certainly, if there's a steep increase in studios and single rooms, I think we should learn a lesson from more mature markets such as the UK, where the steep increase of such kind of rooms also led to increased isolation and mental health difficulties, especially for international students. Therefore, not only common areas, plenty of diversified common areas, but digital tools, but fantastic staff. These are all key elements in the success of the PBSA. A mixité, so different types of rooms. So a possibility of choosing among a variety is also really interesting. The ease of use and the flexibility of rooms is also very important, being able to use them differently depending on the needs at the time of the day. Of course, I won't even mention how fantastic connection is crucial. We traditionally have a strong focus on urban regeneration. We see that students appreciate how connected our buildings are within the districts, and all of our efforts in terms of sustainability of the building themselves. But the main takeaway would be always to talk to students, see how they actually use the areas. Do not assume that you or your architect know everything, and do not miss this huge opportunity for improvement, continuous improvement of your residences. And for your last question, right now we're looking at 300 bed plus.
Thank you. That is indeed very, very interesting. And like the two interesting factors that you really say is it's engagement with students, also for your own internal decision-making purposes, but also flexibility. Pierre and Enrico, you have obviously this longitudinal experience, so I'd be eager to hear your take on all of this.
Yeah, to be brief, I can tell you the key needs and key preferences that we have noticed, especially in these last couple of years, and that we are embedding in the concept of the new projects that we are developing. So, first of all, a strong preference for single and suite. Our all of residencies, future all of residencies will have a very high share of single and suites. It's a format that to us allows a good compromise between safety, let's say privacy, and also socialization. Basically, the single and suite doesn't have a kitchen inside, so forces the guest to cook in communal areas, which is an important moment of socialization. So that's our view vis-a-vis studios, which are certainly interesting, but I share the opinion of Susanna that may become a little risky in terms of, let's say, insulation and mental health of our guests. Second aspect, very important in our project, is to have outdoor spaces. Currently, all our residents have that, but in our new projects, there is always an attention for having outdoor spaces. And finally, there are soft aspects in terms of let's say, evolving type of services, service to the client. Some way are already mentioned both by Susanna and Elisabetta. Clearly, our employees are evolving to have a higher level of skills in terms of like mental coaching, tutoring, networking, all these aspects that in, let's say, in a world in which the new generation are digital, so very quick, but also very often very fragile, are important to be provided in our service.
Right, I see. And it's interesting that you mentioned also the support scheme. Now, I was also looking at some of the questions popping up. There is a bunch of them resonating about rental increases. So I just wanted to note that we will get there in a few seconds. Very quickly about your take on future outlook, especially looking at the pipeline and what Andrew mentioned, that still with these new 6,300 plus beds, the saturation will be far below 10%. How do you see the future of the market in Milan? Perhaps what investment outlook do you expect for the city in the coming years? And perhaps let's start with Susanna for this question. Thank you.
Sure. Well, there's a very important premise to be made about Milan. This is a very interesting case study in Italy. It moves, or better, it runs at its own rhythm in terms of number of international students. Indeed, you will see the figures that you mentioned there. You will not see it elsewhere, at least for the moment. In terms of talents, resources, and companies, the attractiveness of the city of Milan has no equivalent in Italy. We do expect rising investments in the city, in Italy in general. We should not forget, for instance, the preparation for the Olympics in 2026, which will be extremely beneficial on a national level. There's another aspect, all the opportunities that are connected with the PNRR, the additional fund that the Italian government will also add, totaling 221 billion euros in sectors such as education, research, digitalization, cohesion, inclusion, and certainly such funds will have a huge boost on the economy as a whole, on the academic sector as a whole. And in particular, the student housing sectors, the grants, the student residences will receive a very strong boost, given the very ambitious government plan of doubling the student residences in Italy by 2026. The key real estate indicators did not plummet during the pandemic. We do not expect them to do so in the very near future. Actually, there's a really vibrant BTR office and hybrid living space investments. The main challenge for Milan is to find opportunities where ideally you have urban regeneration, because that's important for us, highly performing green building, matching location, and the expected yield given the prices in Milan. We should also point out to potential investors that the prices that they saw also include a peculiarity within the Italian student housing system, which are the living learning residences, which are accredited by the Ministry of Education and Research. So the prices are higher, yes, but you do not only have meal plans, you have a set of activities and training opportunities, which at the end also are part of the curriculum of the students. That and therefore it is a standalone product category that we have in Italy. Italy has an untapped potential, so it is very attractive because of its high quality academic offering. It's art, obviously. It can also be an affordable study destination. If you do not consider the key private universities, if you do not consider also, Milan indeed is rather expensive, but there are so many other opportunities there. It is highly attractive. We see a very active, vibrant investment scenario there in the coming years, and we'll be very happy to be part of it.
Great. I think it was really great input in terms of, you mentioned the kind of value proposition that the city provides, but also kind of the nationwide support that it gets. And what we know from working with governments and the sector associations is really that if there is a consensus on the government level, it usually fuels that demand for studying abroad. And what we also see is kind of that return of destination marketing, something that was so prominent in the last decade. It again becomes much more evident that this is what students are basing their decisions on. And so with that, perhaps Stefano, because you've probably just recently did all the forecasting and prediction for your asset. So how do you see that investment outlook for Milan?
We see, building on what Susanna just said, we see very strong interest from international markets, capital markets in Italy and Milan specifically. The living sector at large is growing as an asset class. We as Hines, we not only cover student housing, but we also have BTR, we have service apartments, we have the full spectrum. Basically, we have investment plans for the next few years of 5,000 student housing beds and 5,000 apartments that will become a new institutional, let's say, resident for rent product. We see Milan as really the best destination in Italy for a number of factors. Some of them Susanna already mentioned. So the growing internationalization, the growing appeal of the city to students, to young professionals, and so on. What we really enjoy in Milan is a very transparent and efficient municipality to work with. So the municipality of Milan is able to offer, let's say, streamlined process and town planning process, which gives safety and insurances to international investors. So nobody wants to start a development and then be stuck for 3 years because of planning issues. Milan as a city is growing internationally, and in terms of transport, public transport, it's extremely well connected. There are important urban regeneration processes. So, as Susanna mentioned, obviously the Winter Olympics, but there are other initiatives. For example, the Reinventing Cities competition. We as Hines have won the one for Bovisa, which is right next to Politecnico. This is a very important piece of land that will be regenerated, but it's not just us. For example, the ex Marcello area, this is going to host YED, which is a university, and then student housing. So the municipality of Milan really recognizes the importance of, among others, obviously, student housing, and there is a strong commitment from the administration to make this happen.
I see. Thank you. Pier and Enrico, anything that you'd complement to what was just said?
No, we share the idea that the investment outlook is positive. the key reason, I think, comes from your statistics. When you show that the provision rate is about 5% in Milan, that's the key reason. That means that all the other students which are coming from outside Milan at the moment are basically hosted by private landlords. And I do believe that the format of PBSA is starting to be shared and appreciated. In some cases, it was not even known. And that will be the key driver for the growing demand for PBSA, much more than I would say, the physiological growth of the number of attendees at universities. So therefore, we are bullish. Basically, we are in the process to make it public that we have 3 Hall of Residence in our pipelines. That will be up to the investors. All these investors are ESG institutions. And in addition, as Indomus, we want to continue to lead the pack, offering our skills and knowledge of Milan to investors under management contract schemes. So these investors with our skills may enter Milan also using their own brand name. And management contract is the second line of our business at the moment.
Thank you. And now let's wrap up the round with Elisabetta. What is your take on all this?
I totally agree with my colleagues. Stefano and Susanna made the perfect representation of the situation. And Milan is in Italy. We see that we say that Milan is the most European city in Italy, and that's the first reason why the investors want to invest in Milan. And in general, I guess that the investors are many foreign investors are coming in Italy to invest. And also because the market is quite young, and maybe the yield is not maybe still reachable, because even if the rates, especially in Milan, are higher than in other cities, is still approachable. And of course, if the Italian fund of investment that have some public participant, they can stand at 5% of yield. But the international, and Stefan, that's the most international of us, can see that the expected yield is much more higher. And in this moment is still reachable. Maybe it will not be in a few years, because of course the market is like growing, is still young, and in a few years we will reach that yield, and everything will be like difficult. But I also guess that there is the inflection in this moment is very high, and we are going in that very high point. And for example, I saw one question is how the energy and the gas is affecting the rates. It's affecting a lot. Everything will growing and growing up, and so maybe the yield will match the increases of the general prices. I mean, we hopefully not too much, because I mean, in this situation, it's like we are changing everything, changing rates, changing project, because the CapEx plan are very unexpected in this moment. But I guess this is like the step the country is doing to reach an higher level of cost, of needs, and also yield and investments.
Terrific. Yep, I think you really, touch base on something so critical, and I think it'd be really essential maybe to end this session with that. So if we can, the rest of the panelists comment on both maybe the price increases, rent increases, as well as what is your yield development expectation. I mean, we still have probably one minute per each of you. So Stefano, if you'd like to follow up on that.
In terms of rents and increases in rents following the current situation, we're still assessing this. For us, it's very important to have a very transparent pricing policy, especially with our partners. So for us, Bocconi University, for starters, is a very important partner. We have an agreement with them for Juvenile. So it's not just a unilateral decision that we can make. So we're carefully considering this, obviously. In terms of yields, obviously the student housing market in Italy is not a consolidated market. It's not a mature market. It's growing. So there haven't been that many core transactions. There have been a few transactions that were more of a forward funding or forward commitment. But we see yields for core transactions really align with the rest of the commercial real estate. So we see a bit of a premium, obviously, compared to office and retail yields, especially in Milan, which is the most mature market. There is a premium given by the different risk profile, but we don't see this premium being huge. So prime office compared to prime student housing, not much of a gap.
Thank you for the input. Pier Enrico, could you comment on that as well?
Yeah, we'll talk about rates and yield. Okay, clearly the impact of increase in say utility cost is huge, and I expect that will be translated in some way, at least, in the tariffs of the next year. That's there is no choice because the impact has been dramatic. Italy is the European country which has been mostly exposed to the increase of gas price, and gas means also electricity and so on, and it will have an impact. In terms of yields, what we have seen, I agree with Stefano that the market is not I would say efficient. So we can share let's say feelings. For sure, the feeling was that initial yield was decreasing in the last few years, and given this trend, exit yield embedded in the decision of investor was probably lower. Now there is the new factor related to the inflation, so it will be and which will have clearly an impact on nominal yields. Probably we have to wait a few months to assess whether this inflation, which is again higher than in the rest of Europe, is a short-term phenomenon or becomes systemic. In that case, again, the compression between the gap of Milan yield and the yield of other major countries might stop to go ahead and reverse.
Of course. Susanna, would you do the honors and wrap up this round?
Absolutely. Well, Milan is indeed a very interesting place to invest ASAP before prices further increase. In terms of yield, certainly as the student housing market further matures and expands further in the country, we expect some alignment with international student housing markets. But of course, we need to factor in all the elements that my colleague have indicated earlier. So we'll see, but we are rather optimistic in this regard that it will further consolidate itself and align with the other major student housing markets.
Do you have any time frame to that, perhaps?
Well, I would say first we need to see how it evolves in the current year, and we'll also see how all the additional funds that have been funneled into the student housing sectors in the next 2-3 years. This will really show us what the scenario will look like.
Of course, and I appreciate. Must say there are probably more than 20 questions still unanswered in the chat box. So what we're going to do after this session, we're going to distribute it to our dear panelists. But I think the time has come to thank you all for your great contribution. I think this was an interesting start to the 2022 series, and we would like to express our greatest gratitude for you taking the time to join us today. And obviously a big thank you to all the delegates and attendees joining us today. We will make the presentation and recording available, and of course those questions will be answered at the time. So once again, great pleasure hosting these sessions. I would like to wish everybody a nice rest of the day, and hopefully see you at one of our upcoming webinars. Thank you so very much.